So not only are the parents distant and cold and not affectionate, not interested, not spending a lot of time with their children, but nor are they monitoring them, nor are they providing a lot of supervision, and nor are they providing appropriate discipline and guidance when the children need it. So all of that is missing. So as you can see, none of these three are ideal. The last parenting style, the authoritative parenting style, has been shown in studies to be the most effective parenting style. This is the parenting style that has high levels of both warmth and control, where you really have a balance, where you care about your children, you're interested in them, you demonstrate that overtly, and at the same time, you provide a lot of control to the children to help mold them in the right direction. So what are the consequences of some of these other parenting strategies and styles? What happens? What happens, for example, with an authoritarian parenting? So unfortunately, when there isn't that warm connection to the parent, the children still engage in a lot of negative behaviors, delinquency, being aggressive, getting involved in substances, etc. Except they do it more covertly. They hide what they're doing. They do it outside of the presence of their parents. They do it when if they're in public school, they do it at public school, or wherever they are. They find things to do outside of monitored settings. And they're resentful of the parents because they don't have that connection. They don't have that sense that this is really the limits that the parents are providing are in their best interest, and they come from love. All they know is sort of a cold sort of enforcement of rules, and so they react to that with resentment and anger. And it leads to dissatisfaction, rebellion, conflict. You can see sort of high conflict homes develop as a result of this, especially in adolescence. And it can lead to low self-esteem and self-respect on the part of the child, and emotional problems. So these children can develop things like anxiety and depression. Again, because you lack that balance. They're just being pounded on without someone really explaining why rules are in place, why they're being disciplined, why consequences are provided, and without the demonstration of love and affection. You actually see, as you would guess, it would be straightforward to think about the opposite scenario of authoritarian parenting, and that would be permissive parenting. Again, a warm parent who's very loving, but doesn't know how to control their child in any way, shape, or form. And so the children are undisciplined, they don't have the necessary limits that they need. Parents are ineffective in influencing these children's decision-making. The children disregard the parents because they see them as being of no consequence. That they're fine in terms of providing love and assurance, but beyond that, the parents serve no purpose in terms of guiding the child. And kids are savvy, they pick up on that very quickly, and unfortunately will turn, as I mentioned earlier, to peers and other much less appropriate sources for validation and help in decision-making. The risk of delinquency here increases as well, and again, so you have similar issues as the authoritarian parent, and here it may be more overt, where the child has no problem, the teenager has no problem acting out in the presence of the parent. The parent is not respected. The parent is not considered. They'll do whatever they want, and they can do it sort of in the parent's face. And unfortunately, often, with permissive parenting, you see a lot of unstructured time and a lot of unmonitored time, which are critical aspects of not having that control that kids need. And as I mentioned earlier, unstructured, unmonitored time increases the risk of delinquency. It's pretty well established in the literature. The third type of parenting that I mentioned is the neglectful parenting. So these parents, unfortunately, take the worst of what I mentioned and combine them. So not only is there low control, but there's also low warmth. They're really unavailable to their children, and the children are left to fend for themselves. These are classically the families that you think of when you think about youth that are involved in gang activity. Right? A lot of the youth that you see that are involved in inner city gangs, you'll see that the parents are disengaged, they're neglectful, often because they themselves suffer from things like substance abuse, etc. So it's a classic example of what happens when a parent is disengaged and unavailable, neglectful. The children lack self-respect. They have no self-esteem. They really don't have any pride. They'll have a sense of what's right and wrong and how to lead their lives in a productive, goal-oriented way. And they lack any control to reach goals. They're lost, and there's not a sense of investment in your future. You're not future-oriented. It's all about pleasure. It's about the here and the now, without any sense of consequences and who they may be hurting in the process. You may also see some individuals who are raised in a neglectful environment as being harsh and cold. So again, delinquency, youth crime, grabbing what they want, snatching what they desire, without regard for others and any kind of regard for the rule of law. And it goes without saying that these children are left with little guidance or affection, and the consequences can be dire. So the best outcomes, as demonstrated by social science research, is for families where parents use the authoritative parenting style. At this point, that should be pretty clear. So again, parents who have a nice balance between high levels of warmth as well as high levels of control. Really know how to engage their child and understand them, reach out to them, respect them, listen to them, ask for their opinions. At the same time, provide very clear limits and consequences for inappropriate behavior and guide them through the stages of life. And these children are sought out. They're the kids who other children are attracted to because they see them as being well-adjusted and easy to get along with. They adapt well to school, and all studies seem to indicate that children who come from authoritative families are high achievers in school settings and do well. And as teenagers, when there are a lot of external demands and risks and temptations, they continue to be invested in school, in accomplishing and avoiding some of those real dangers that are lurking, substance use, and being physically and mentally healthy. So you really see well-rounded adolescents develop as a result of this style of parenting. So again, it's important to know that as an authoritative parent, that you do respect and value your child and their opinion, and that's an important aspect of this as well. As you're doing that, however, an authoritative parent takes responsibility ultimately for providing guidance and really disciplining, and understanding that a child's physical and mental growth and well-being is hinged very closely not only to warmth but also elements of control, of providing guidance and discipline. An interesting outcome of this is that if you adhere to authoritative parenting from a young age with a child, you actually find that your work as a parent, rather than becoming more difficult with time, becomes easier. Because they develop, again, psychobabble, an internal locus of control, right? The children internalize, they understand what you're explaining to them, what you're teaching them, and the guidance you're giving them to lead their lives. They internalize it, they adopt it as their own. They see the fruits of the kind of life that you want for them and the kind of life that you're guiding them to pursue, and they begin doing it independently with less and less need for you to be overtly controlling them. So that's a nice result. So I've said a lot about warmth and control, so let's go back and look at those two areas a little specifically. We know now that authoritative parenting, when you practice these two elements, is the most successful, and the rest not so successful, with a lot of pitfalls, a lot of dangers along the way. So you can break it down in terms of building a positive relationship with your child, providing that warmth. You can build it down into several elements. So let's look at some of those elements, and some of them will be a review of things I've already said. One is affection. Again, this is pretty straightforward. Provide love and concern, accept your child, understand your child. And the more you accept and understand, the more you love your child, and the closer you'll both feel to each other. The next element after affection is attention and awareness. And this can be difficult. This is, I think, probably more challenging for many of us. And that is providing the time to get to know your child and not assuming you know them simply because you're their biological parent or their adoptive parent or whatever the relationship happens to be. Simply because you're their guardian means I know you. That's not the case at all. If you don't take the time to get to know your child, how do you know them? So that's an incorrect way of thinking. You really have to take the time, the effort to get to know your children.